Hey all, I want to welcome everyone to this video. Today I'm going to be talking about a little bit about Apache Pulsar and RabbitMQ. I had already talked about Pulsar and Kafka. Someone asked what about the difference between Pulsar and RabbitMQ? So I'll be discussing the pros and cons very quickly and very briefly between both platforms and their ideal use cases and which is better for a pub sub model more than anything else. So what is Pulsar? So a Pulsar is something more of like an open source distributed messaging system that can be used for a variety of purposes, including real-time streaming, data ingestion, event-driven applications. Pulsar is designed to be scalable, fault-tolerant, and highly available. It supports multiple data models and, with more often than not, in this case, pub subs, queues, and streams. A lot of the cases nowadays, people are using pub subs more than anything else. Now, RabbitMQ it's another open source messaging system, but it's widely used, of course. It's a great message broker, put it this way. So think of it like a message queue. Like if you're familiar with the old MQs of IBM and Windows, Microsoft, RabbitMQ is the open source version, and it's a great one basically. And it implements the sort of AMPQ model, where it's the advanced messaging queuing protocol, and it's really easy to use and it's flexible, and it supports a wide variety of data models, including pub subs, queues, and of course topics more than anything else. I mean, that's now more the case because it started as more pub subs and topics became more and more mainstream through Kafka. RabbitMQ essentially evolved a little bit to sort of fit that need essentially. Now with Pulsar itself versus, let's say, RabbitMQ, there are some pros and cons, of course. So I'm going to give you one of the pros basically with Pulsar. Pros, of course, is it's high throughput latency. It's got low latency, of course. Scalable and fault tolerant. It supports multiple data models, as we mentioned, and supports definitely geo-replication, and has definitely rich set of APIs. Now, this, of course, is some stuff I've already mentioned in my prior video about Pulsar, and of course, it's open source. One of the cons is it's not as mature as RabbitMQ, and it's not as widely used as, let's say, Kafka or even Red Pandas for that matter. Red Pandas, sorry. And some of the features are still under development. Now, with RabbitMQ, it's mature, definitely widely used, more than a lot of the open source MQs that are out there. Supports a wide range of data models, has a large community of users and developers, and it's easy to use and manage, and it has definitely a rich set of features. I could get more into the features if you want. Just let me know in the comments. I'll probably talk about it as well too. The one thing is it's sort of not as scalable and not as fault tolerant as Apache Pulsar, but it sort of is still in the same aspect. It's a little bit more, definitely more fault tolerant than, let's say, Microsoft's MQ or IBM's MQ for that matter. The one thing though RabbitMQ does not right now, from my understanding, I think it's coming down the line, is will eventually support geo-replication. Now, it doesn't have as rich a set of APIs as Apache Pulsar. Now, one of the things is, someone might ask, is well, you have RabbitMQ, what about event, the cloud providers with their message queues, basically, with AWS's Kinesis, Microsoft's Event Hub, and I forgot what GCP's. I think GCP's pub sub. I'll probably talk about those much later down the line in another video about that, because right now I'd like to keep my videos as short as possible. Now, some of the use cases, of course, for Pulsar, and some of the use cases for Pulsar and RabbitMQ is this basically. Now, the ideal use case for Pulsar is it's great. It's a good choice for applications that require high throughput, low latency, and scalability. It also has a good choice for applications that need support geo-replication. Now, some of the ideals are real-time ingestion, of course, real-time streaming, data ingestion, event-driven applications, machine learning, and IoT. Now, when we're saying event-driven applications, think of the old CEPs like Esper. Those were great back then, but then Kafka came about as well as Pulsar. This is coming more and more mainstream more than anything else. Now, RabbitMQ is great as a simple messaging for simple messaging applications. Its integration between ideal for like, integration between different systems. And it's really good, it's ideal in a scenario for like asynchronous processing and of course load balancing. Now, one of the things is like with this, somebody say, well, what about ZeroMQ? I can't talk about that right now, but I could talk about it on another video at that point if you want me to talk about ZeroMQ a little bit as well too. Honestly, if you had a choice between ZeroMQ and RabbitMQ, I might go the ZeroMQ route for a message queue at that point. Now, one of the things for Apache Pulsar and RabbitMQ, of course, is like, some of the features, high versus medium, the latency, as you can see there, scalability. RabbitMQ is scalable, but not as scalable as, let's say, Pulsar is. Fault tolerance, between the two, Pulsar works out. Geo-replication, as I mentioned, now one of the data models, it supports, of course, pub, sub, queues, and streams, whereas RabbitMQ doesn't really support streams, but it supports queues. Now, if you had to choose between a message queue between RabbitMQ and Apache Pulsar, I would definitely go with that RabbitMQ because of the fact of the AMPQ standard at that point. Now, the APIs that it has the AMPQ, of course, dump and MQTT, whereas Pulsar, there's APIs for as much as you want to put in basically at that point. Of course, one of the other big factors of Apache Pulsar, it's definitely new compared to RabbitMQ. RabbitMQ has been around for like a good 15 years, I believe. They're both free. They're both open source. Now, if you're asking which is a better publisher subscriber model to use, basically, like which is a better pub sub to use, where you have publishers that send messages to subscribers and then subscribers receiving the messages and process them. Both Apache Pulsar and RabbitMQ support that, but I would go with the Apache Pulsar route if it's between Pulsar and RabbitMQ, that is, as a pub sub. If you need definitely higher throughputs, low latency, and scalability, whereas RabbitMQ, it's again really, really great for like a messaging system to support large range model data models for a messaging queue environment. Ideally, that's the one you want to go to. Between RabbitMQ and ZeroMQ, I could go a little bit more into that as well too. Again, let me know if you want me to talk about that in the comment section. One of the other aspects as well too is if I had a choice between Pulsar and Kafka, I would go with Kafka for now because the fact is it definitely is much more, the latency is much more the latency is much more geared towards lower latency in Kafka. Pulsar was trying to come to that nature. The other aspect as well too is with Kafka, it's kind of changed now. It was dependent on Zookeeper. That was one of the biggest drawbacks at that point, but now it's moving away from that. But the other thing is basically the throughput is still high enough to the point where it gets charged a large number of RPSs versus Pulsar. RabbitMQ itself, yes, there is a drawback to the latency and the number of requests per seconds that come into RabbitMQ. I would not use that. Again, if you have a high RPS environment, I would not use RabbitMQ as that pub sub. Pulsar makes more sense between RabbitMQ and between the two, basically. But if it's between Pulsar, RabbitMQ, and Kafka, I would go the Kafka route, quite honestly. But with that, I'll leave it at that. I hope I answered any of your questions. If you want me to go further into these, I will. Or if you want me to talk about RabbitMQ and ZeroMQ or Red Panda for that matter, let me know. Or even the cloud environments for that matter with GCP's, AWS's, and Azure's own little sort of pub sub / messaging queue environments as well too. Let me know about that. I'll talk about that as well too if you want me to talk about that. With that, I'll leave it at that. If you, again, leave your comment in the comment section. I do respond. I do read my comments when I get notified. Unfortunately, in this last comment that I saw, I didn't see it until literally like a couple of days ago, unfortunately. I was like, damn. And as well as the fact of I do respond to them when they do warrant a response. In this case, this video is actually a response to that comment that was made about Kafka versus Pulsar. And also in the aspect of any other aspects that you want to talk about with RabbitMQ, Pulsar, or any other piece of pub sub environment you want me to talk about, I'll gladly talk about it. Hey, if there's a new one that's out there that I'm not familiar with, let me know. I'll try to look it up and try to mess with it at that point as well too, and see if it's probably usable at that point. With that, I'll leave it at that. Again, if you like my videos, like my content, like my channel, please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. If you want any more information, please let me know again. And for those that have subscribed, I thank you for that. And with that, I'll leave it at that. Unfiltered, unedited, and always unrehearsed. Until next time.